this puts the 2008 move, it makes it look like a little blip in terms of what they've done. And to make it very clear, this is theft from anyone who has any savings, and it also is theft from anyone who is paying for food every day and struggling to pay their bills because the cost of food is rising and will continue to rise. There are ramifications to these sorts of things.
Buddha blesses me.
What's going on, crypto cousins? It's your Bitcoin baby daddy here with another episode of Krypton Culture. So we had to bring him back. One of the man, the myth, the legend himself, Broccoli Rob, the secret sauce behind Bitcoin and friends. How you doing today?
Good, man. Good to see you again. Yeah, I mean, wow, it's been like 6 months, I think, roughly since we talked last. So lots happened.
So much has changed. Just
Yeah,
everything, like the show stayed the same. It's just gotten better and better over time, but just everything around us. And I'm like, oh, wow. So these Bitcoin people weren't crazy about this recession thing. What's going on? I thought we were just screaming it just to scream it, but it looks like we were serious.
yeah, man. I think Bitcoin is being proven more and more necessary and useful every day. We're moving into a period where the financial system is, it's kind of like someone who's been drinking too much for years and years and years and was starting to sober up. They were raising interest rates, trying to kind of bring sanity back. But as soon as they did that, the market started tanking. They brought the interest rates back down, and then of course they got this great excuse in this coronavirus
Oh my God. And the thing is,
to turn
so
the
no, go
yeah.
ahead, go ahead. I'll let you start first and then I'll add on to
No,
that.
go.
No, because so it's killing less people. I don't know if this is fact still, but it's killing less people than the flu. And I'm like, really? Like, wait, what are we all afraid of? What's going on here? And I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I don't want to downplay it too much, but I don't know anyone who's died from Rona. And so no, and honestly,
I
and I
don't
know.
I don't either. Well, here's the thing. From the few studies that I've seen where they actually did like a broad sampling of people's blood, they actually took their blood and looked for antibodies for this virus. The number of people who have been exposed to it looks to be significantly higher, potentially like 10 to 30 times higher than what was thought when they were coming out with these crazy projections, of like the guy from what's his name, Neil Ferguson, I think it is, the guy from the United Kingdom was saying over 2 million Americans were going to die if they didn't do this crazy lockdown. And even with the lockdown, it was supposed to be several 100,000 that were going to die. Now, the problem is this was all based on, it's like sort of like you've got this numerator and the denominator in this equation that gives you the death rate, right? But if the denominator is way, way, way smaller than it actually is, then it's going to make that death rate look really big. So the reality is, I think many more people have already had this. I had a really nasty flu in January when I was in Mexico. Um, it was one of the worst I've had in a long time. And I feel like I get a flu like once a year. And
Okay.
honestly, like I just look at that as this is part of being alive. And, building your immune system requires that you actually encounter viruses and bugs. And so your body is able to build up antibodies and you have more resilience that way. That's how nature works. But anyway, I had a bad flu. I don't know if it was the Rona or not, but I think many more people have had it than was originally suspected. And so that means the death rate is pretty much on par with the common flu. And I've
Mm,
seen multiple studies now that are saying this. Unfortunately, when people have been terrorized by the media and they still, by and large, believe what they hear on the news, I think it takes a while for the truth to sink in, or maybe it never will. I don't know. I'm honestly I'm very disturbed by what I've seen. I'm living out in California now,
yeah.
and I mean,
Oh, 3 more months, huh?
yeah, right. They keep extending this thing. I don't see any reason for it. In just common sense things like if you know if you're worried about getting sick, like go outside, get sun. Vitamin D is one of the main factors in. I actually saw a study about this in coronavirus. If you have vitamin C deficiency, you're much more likely to have issues with this. So, I mean, this is just common sense stuff like go outside, get fresh air, get some sun, which will help your body to produce natural vitamin D. Don't eat shitty food, take care of your body. And if you do those things, like this is not anything to worry about. For people who are older, or if you have a compromised immune system, for whatever reason, you might need to be a little more careful. But yeah, I think we've been sold a bill of goods, and I think it's partly been used to justify in a huge amount of money printing. Over $6.5 trillion has been created by the Federal Reserve in the last few months. Um,
Go
this put
Burr.
the this puts the 2008 move. It makes it look like a little blip in terms of what they've done. And to make it very clear, this is theft from anyone who has any savings, and it also is theft from anyone who is paying for food every day and struggling to pay their bills because the cost of food is rising and will continue to rise. There are ramifications to these sorts of things.
I just saw that article as well.
Yeah.
And I was saying to myself, oh, wow, they give you free money and then the price of everything goes up. But they said it wasn't supposed to. And yet it happens anyways. And I'm like, oh, this is not going to end well.
No. And I mean, it's, if you think about it with just, a little bit of logic and think it through, it's like, if you have, it's not like, we have 6 times as much hamburgers and food to eat, right? But now we have the money supply has, I don't, it's hard to even keep track. I think the M1 number, which is like the readily available money in checking and those sorts of like CDs, like basically like cash in a bank ready to
Yeah.
be spent in a checking account. That number, I believe it was somewhere around $1 trillion, and it's got to be, it's got to be. Not all of the 6.5 trillion has gone, right into that. Like some of it's gone to prop up other things. But long story short, the people, Washington is picking winners and losers.
Yeah.
And the people who are winning are the CEOs and the bailouts, the companies that are being bailed out, the airlines, and so on and so forth. The people who are losing, as always, are the common people who are going to be paying more and more for their food and for their housing and for everything else. So if you're tired of getting screwed by the system, buy Bitcoin. That's my message to everyone watching. Yeah, buy Bitcoin, and also think for yourself, and do yourself a favor and unplug from the mainstream media, because it's their job to brainwash you. That's what they do. It's television programming. They're programming you. uh, that's really sadly what it is. So don't buy that shit. Like go outside, get sun. I mean, even people wearing masks, I think is just totally insane.
I haven't worn a mask like this whole time, and I know people are like, "How dare you? How could you? You have to protect the person across." I'm like,
Forget
no,
that, man. That's
like,
crazy
come on,
talk.
bro. Like, you guys are really, everyone's walking around with masks, and I just see it like, I remember, what was it, Costco? Costco didn't allow people in their stores unless they had a mask on. I mean, I get it for the greater good, but when the stats come out and all this information, and this is why I love like being in the crypto space, because everybody's like, verify it, show me the proof, and it's always like, they don't care about what you're saying, show me the proof. We keep getting false numbers, we keep getting just data that's not reliable, and I'm like, so what is really going on? Are you guys really just using this Rona as an excuse because you guys couldn't prop up markets anymore?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's exactly that. And then there's also, there are other agendas at play here,
Of course.
which it's a big rabbit hole that we could go down. But yeah, I mean, we like our generation, we really need to start stepping up, and taking leadership more and more, because we really I feel like I'm in a madhouse and the crazy people are running it. And, just basic common sense stuff has just been thrown out the window. Like wearing a mask is originally, traditionally, people would do that if they were sick to try to not spread their mucus
Right.
and germs on other people. And if you're sick, that's a fine thing to do. But if you're a healthy individual, I mean, I've seen multiple doctors who are well credentialed argue that you actually might be harming yourself wearing a mask because, first of all, you're breathing in more carbon dioxide, so your body is not getting potentially sufficient oxygen. There's also arguments about essentially like if you did have a virus, you might be increasing your own viral load because you're essentially breathing back in viral particles that your body's expelling.
Right.
So, there's at the very least, there's not, this is not some kind of uniform like uh, guarantee on the way to move forward. This is a new idea that's been foisted on us. Hey, don't go outside. Stay in your home. Don't be around friends. Like, I mean, all of these things. If you just think about human thriving, we need other humans. We're social creatures. We need to
Right.
be outside. We need sun. We need to be in fresh air and in nature. You take all that stuff away from people, the outcomes are not going to be good. And a lot of Americans are struggling already with their health for a lot of reasons. And then you start imposing these crazy draconian lockdown measures, which are also not even proving to really have helped. There are countries like, I believe it's Sweden, where they didn't have a lockdown, at least not anywhere near. Like they basically they encouraged like some social distancing, and I think some restaurants were like partially closed and things, but generally speaking they didn't shut down. Their schools were open, and their death like their numbers and everything are not anywhere out of the norm with other countries that had draconian measures put in place. So I think bottom line is, as Americans, we have a history of freedoms that we need to uphold. Freedom to meet with other people. Freedom to go to church. Freedom to go and assemble. Freedom to protest. And I don't care if there's a virus or not. It's not an excuse to try to lock down and remove
Those
those
civil
liberties.
rights.
Yeah, those civil rights. Yeah. So we just need to all. My advice is just don't follow these crazy laws, and to the degree that you can, like if there's a store that won't let you shop, then just go somewhere else.
Oh, I mean,
Try to
by
give
now,
your business to reasonable people.
right. And so like now I think I think stores don't really have a choice to say no because people are starting to spend less and less, and I'm like, wait, that's kind of the opposite of what you should be doing right now because they're asking us to spend, but everyone's saving, but then they're printing money, and so that's completely destroying everybody's savings, and it's like kind of counterintuitive of what's happening. And just like how you said, all these big corporations are getting these bailout money, and just like how in 2008 2009 all the bailout money just goes to the executives and very few of it actually trickles down, which, I was researching on trickle down economics and how it doesn't work. It never worked. And so it's unfortunate to see what's been going on. Fortunately, I still, I'm in the accounting industry, and that's one of the last people that get cut. Like it's such a safe job per se,
Sure.
but
Right.
Sometimes I get worried, like, let me just make sure, to cross my I's and dot my T's, because I recently had to file for my stepfather about 2 weeks ago for his unemployment because he worked in hotels, and he worked for this hotel for about 20 years and
Yeah.
instant furlough. There's nothing you could do.
Yeah.
And I filed his unemployment 2 weeks ago, and it's still just pending.
Right.
So what happened here in Florida is the unemployment, and people have their opinions about what unemployment and if it actually helps or whatnot, but it's there for situations like this.
Right.
And there's no money there. There's like the initial website for the Florida unemployment, their initial website wasn't ready for the amount of people that were going to come through, and that website crashed. So they built a brand new website, and so then people started reapplying in that new website. And what was it? Out of like 300,000 people that filed for unemployment in Florida, only like 9,000 people have gotten that actual application through and getting some type of relief for this pandemic. And I'm sitting here thinking, wow, so they really don't care about the little guy. It's really about just making sure to keep propping up these big corporations. And so what is the little guy supposed to do? And I always try to say, you take the silent direction out. You take your money, and it's a peaceful protest, as we like to say, and put it in a system that cares. I want to say the system cares about you more, but the rules of this system are way better than the rules of the system that we're working with.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. That's exactly right. I mean, Bitcoin doesn't care about anyone. It's just software.
Yeah,
that's running on computers.
It's just Bitcoin with a code inside.
Right. But that's what we need, a system that is outside of the touch and the grasp and the manipulation of humans to direct it in their favor, which is what the Federal Reserve is. It's a tool for wealthy, plutocrats to further enrich themselves and to ensure that even if they make terrible mistakes, they don't have to suffer for those mistakes. And that's, without bankruptcy, capitalism doesn't work. Countries need to be able to go bankrupt. And the thing that a lot of people don't understand is it's like, if, American Airlines, pick some big airline, right? If they go under, it's not like all the planes disappear and all of those resources and all that capital is just vanishes. The reality is that all those assets can and will be bought up by someone who is capitalized, who has the resources, and they'll come in and they'll re-engineer, the company, and they'll decide, hey, you know what, we can make some cuts here. We should make some, we should invest in this, and they'll make some adjustments, and then the business will come back. And so, the point is, like, capitalism works when good behavior is rewarded and when bad behavior is penalized. And that's what the free market will allow that to happen, if you allow it to operate. But when the government comes in and picks winners and losers, in the end, we all lose, because we end up seeing these inefficient and ill-run organizations get propped up and bailed out. And so, but I mean, I think the long-term picture here is that, and I think a lot of people have known this for a long time now, but it's just becoming more apparent that the United States is going to bankrupt its, well, it is already bankrupt, but I mean, it's going to, I think within our lifetime, within maybe even the next 5 or 10 years, the dollar is going to be wiped out.
It's not going to be what it is today, that's for sure.
No.
Maybe sooner than we think. I mean, granted, there's people are always screaming doom and gloom. I don't think U.S. is going to lose their hold on like the economy. It might weaken to China, of all places, of all people, but I don't think they're going to lose. I mean, I think that's why this whole and it's just like conspiracy theory in my own head, but I think this is why they're like banking on like SpaceX is like, well, hey, look, China got the blockchain. We're going to have space. We're gonna take a step even further. And so I mean, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, cool. I mean, I hope I have a spot in the spaceship, please, God, hoping, But let's go ahead and flip this, and I love how like we're talking about this, and this somehow still relates to Bitcoin. Like, Bitcoin fixes everything, and I'm like, yes, Bitcoin fixes this.
It does.
So I remember watching some of the episodes, and I started seeing the Ugly Goat on one episode, the Dollar Vigilante on another episode, and I'm like, oh yeah, he's a Bitcoin maximalist. How does that how does that feel? Because I know in the community you guys get a lot of backlash for being Bitcoin maximalists, and I remember you were saying how you used to be like an altcoin, now you're like, nah, we're Bitcoin only. But if you guys want to support us, we have no problem you guys supporting us. Yes.
Yeah.
But
sure.
And so I remember the episode where you had Litecoin, and then we made Feathercoin, and then you made Shitcoin, and I'm like, oh Lord, what are they gonna do? And I just love how you can poke fun at all these other coins, these other situations, and still be like, but we're here for the betterment of the community, and we're here to spread knowledge and education. I know there was like no question in there, but how would I wanted to phrase that? Hold on. The question was, how does it feel just like, dealing with like some of the backlash? But I personally, I don't see like what the issue is, because there's the space is here for everyone. So how do you deal with like some of that? Before you answer, let me fix this again.
Sure.
I can edit all this out, thank God.
No
I'm
worries.
using there. Yeah, because it
Um,
fell out like it fell out like 5 minutes ago, and I'm like, oh no, and I'm like,
you
okay,
made
let
it
me just
pretty
use a different.
far. Yeah.
I made it pretty good. I'm like, yes, yes, good. Don't crush me. But all right. So
Okay.
yeah. So how does it feel just like being a maximalist, having that hate, but knowing that you're not going anywhere and the space isn't going anywhere, and you're part of the space, and we need
Sure.
critical individuals like yourself.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think people need to understand that, like, it's all love. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, like, we're just like, for me at least, I'll speak for myself. Chris, the writer director is not quite as much of a maximalist as I am. He's definitely a big Bitcoiner. He has a lot of Bitcoin. I think he's a little more interested in a few of the other, other crypto altcoin, whatever projects we're going to call those. So it's definitely not like we're this monolith in terms of how we think either, in terms of the show. But for me, I just want to be a voice of caution for people, because if you're coming into this whole thing and you're very new to it, bottom line is there are a lot of projects that are just outright scams. Like, either the people are delusional about what they're actually going to be able to deliver in terms of
Right.
the product, or they are just trying to scam people with huge promises, with no, with vaporware, as they would call it, just software that's not even really working. There's a range between, I would say, sort of useful idiots slash, just delusional people, all the way to just outright scammers. But the reality is, also, I think it's important to understand that Bitcoin, whatever ends up winning, and I do believe it's going to be Bitcoin.
Of course,
Uh,
I believe so too, because it's just it already has the network effect.
yeah,
I believe that Bitcoin and maybe even Ethereum, because those are the ones with like the most developers. I think they're gonna last the longest. I don't think a lot of this other stuff is really like there aren't really developers for them.
right, exactly. So I think if a technology is going to supplant something that already has a lot of users and network effect, like Bitcoin does, it's going to have to be not just a little better theoretically. It's going to have to be way better, like, let's say 5 or 10x better.
Yeah,
Um, and I don't see anything that comes close to that. And yeah, so Bitcoin has a huge amount of network effect. It has 11 years of successful history operating and working every day. And I think also, I would just say, I probably talked about this the last time, but I will reiterate that, I've been getting into software development in the last 5 years, and
yeah,
I'm by no means like a senior, super seasoned developer, but I'm getting there. I'm learning, and I've built web apps. I've just been working on a React Native application. I've done a decent amount of software development, and what I can say from my time working in this field is, it's very dangerous when you have software that is trying to do too many things, because it's very easy to introduce problems and bugs. And in other words, the more complex the system is, the more likely it is that you're going to have problems in trying to operate it. And I would say that's where I struggle a lot with Ethereum, because I think it's an interesting project in some ways, but there's a lot of complexity. Like, so in other words,
yeah,
if you have a smart contract platform that can do anything, which, sounds really great, kind of to start out, the danger is that you have contracts that are very hard to audit. And so you end up having bugs. And so, like, the DAO hack, for example, which was a
right,
big thing that happened in Ethereum's history, that happened because, when you have a quote Turing complete platform, it opens the door to a lot of potential different attack vectors. Whereas with Bitcoin, it has a limited scripting language, and some people try to say that's a big negative. But from the perspective of security, having a smaller, as they would say, smaller attack surface is a good thing, because it's less things can go wrong,
right.
basically. And I think also with Bitcoin, choosing to keep the block size small, I think ultimately was the right choice, because for this technology to work, it needs to be sufficiently decentralized, because we are fighting, more than anything, we're fighting against governments, because that's what, Bitcoin is
Yeah,
challenging national currencies. So if we have a system that is not sufficiently decentralized, it could be co-opted by a government. And so that's the attack vector that we should be looking at most vigilantly. And Bitcoin, I think, is doing a good job of remaining and continuing to grow in a decentralized way. And so I think, I've read, I think there's at least 10,000 Bitcoin nodes right now, and I think I've heard there it might even be somewhere close to like 30 or 40,000. So I've seen some different sites on that with different metrics, but even 10,000 is a huge amount
Yeah.
of redundancy. And for people who are getting into this space, like I hope the future that I would like to see is a future where everyone who's like a Bitcoiner, like every dad who's got got a few children and a family, and he's the one who's kind of leading that group of humans, like he should have his own Bitcoin node. He should know how to operate it,
Mm.
and he should be his own bank. And that to me is the way that we get to a future where we understand how money operates on a large scale, and we all enforce these minimum requirements of a money, such as that needs to have a fixed supply,
Right.
right? It needs to be transactable from anyone to anyone else without any government or middleman getting to step in and try to say that you can or cannot spend your money. So these basic sort of human rights need to be protected, and we get there by educating and pulling together. And I think ultimately Bitcoin is going to scale with Lightning Network. I believe it's going to happen. I think we're probably still a year or two out.
Okay,
Uh,
yeah, because I've seen a lot of I know CoinMine. They're built into they have Lightning Network nodes built into coin mines.
yeah, yeah,
I've been looking into the Blue Wallet because that's what LightNight is using.
yeah,
And then there are a couple of things I've seen the Lightning Network slowly growing.
yeah,
And so I think that's a good place. You did bring up two things that I wanted to talk about. And
yeah,
the first thing you were talking about was when new people get into the space, you want to make sure they're getting educated the right way. I feel like sometimes, isn't that part of, unfortunately, I mean, how do I put this? It's more like, fraternity mindset. I had to go through the trenches, so now
sure,
you have to go through the trenches. And I mean, that's holding someone's hand trying to learn this. It's really hard to get someone to like learn this and like say, no, this is what real money is. This is all this other stuff is scams. And until you like start losing money on these scams, or like, wait a second, well, Bitcoin's still doing what it's supposed to do. Bitcoin's still doing it. Maybe I
yeah,
should just go back. And I think that naturally just happens
you're
once
right.
you get
That's
into the
true.
space. And so I think that's more of like, what is it? Dog eat dog, I forget the word for it. But
Laissez faire, maybe,
yeah,
but
more
yeah,
like a laissez-faire kind of deal. Like, hey, you're gonna have to go through it. You'll learn it, and it's just part of getting into the space.
sure,
And
yeah,
then,
I agree with
also,
that.
okay, cool. And then the other thing I wanted to say was in one of I think episode 5, which just came out. You're talking about like bugs and how Bitcoin wasn't even perfect at the beginning. So, it
Sure.
was what BIP 21. Can you talk about a little bit about that? Because that was something I didn't know about. And so you educated me on that. So are you able to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, BIP 21, was that fixing
The inflation
the
bug.
inflation bug, right? Yeah. Yeah, so right, I mean, just like, any software of a decent amount of complexity is going to have bugs in it. This is just humans are fallible. We're not perfect, and when you start building really complex systems, there are edge cases and things that end up cropping up for various reasons. So yeah, there was an inflation bug that was patched early on. If it had gone unnoticed, it would have, you know, I forget how much it was producing, but it was a huge amount. I think it was like in the billions even. Like, so instead of forget 21 million, you're talking billions. So,
And
but
Big would have been done by then. Oh, it would have
yeah,
failed.
yeah, right. So if that had gone unnoticed, I mean, it's like either someone would have had, if someone had found it and exploited it, like they would have just had kind of the equivalent of the Federal Reserve, like an infinite piggy bank. They could just, so that one whale,
Tether.
let's say, could have really manipulated the whole market and done all sorts of things. and this is why it's very important that software, be open source. Is, of course, open source. And that means that anyone can go online, can go look at the code, can audit it, can copy it, can fork Bitcoin and create their own coin, like Litecoin, for example, which is a fork of Bitcoin. And many others have done that as well. But so the fact that Bitcoin's open source and that you have a lot of value there that's stored in Bitcoin means that there's a there's a reason for people to care. There's a reason for people to look. And now you have, and this is part of why I'm also so bullish on Bitcoin, because at the end of the day, a lot of these things end up being sort of like these like virtuous cycles that start to kind of um, amplify and encourage the right behaviors. But bottom line is you've got big companies now that are using Bitcoin in various ways. And now some of these companies are paying for, a Bitcoin core developer, so that they're basically paying someone to just work on Bitcoin, which of course is, tangentially beneficial to their business because their business is built on Bitcoin, but they're also giving back to the community as well. And so there are these sorts of things that are developing more and more now, where you have multiple companies. I think it's at least like 5 or 6 big companies that are all, sponsoring one or two or so core developers. And I think there are over 300, I believe, in that range right now, developers working on Bitcoin. Now, many of them, of course, are very much like sort of part time or just in their spare
Right.
time. But that brain share, that mind share, is growing, and that's extremely important because, yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter what the platform is, that we will probably find bugs as we go. And with Bitcoin, it's likely that we'll find less and less because, well, it's 11 years running now, and they're very cautious with updates. And there have been very few forks, that have even occurred, like soft forks, in the
Right.
last couple of years, right? I mean, we had SegWit, and that's the last one in recent years. So, but software is living, breathing. You've got to keep maintaining and working on it, and so yeah, Bitcoin has a lot going for it in that sense. It's got a lot of smart people, and a lot of big companies that are being built around it, and that's going to continue to help catapult it and push it forward.
Okay.
So, I mean, basically, back to the earlier point, I would just say this: like, yeah, some people are just going to have to fall down and skin their knees and
Mm-hmm.
learn hard lessons, and I think that's part of life. But it's also okay for people, if they're coming in new, to try to listen to people who are smart, who've been in the space, who are speaking honestly about what's going on, and take advice. So I think it is okay for us to also try to steer people and encourage them
Of
to be
course.
smart. And like, sure, I mean, I wouldn't advise it, but if you're going to dabble in altcoins, do it maybe, but do it with a small amount. Like, you should have the bulk of your holdings should be in Bitcoin, regardless of what your feelings are about it versus this new project that you think is the best thing in the world.
Right.
The reality is Bitcoin is already a volatile,
It's already proved it. It's
yeah, it's
11 years in. It's proved it. This
yeah,
project's, it might, like, just like 99% of the projects, it might not be here in a year or two.
right, right,
Okay.
exactly.
So let's there's a point in the show where the Fed or the FUD, and they're infiltrating Silk Road.
Yeah,
And I guess some of the players in the Silk that were investigating Silk Girl, they kind of got a little too deep in, and I guess they didn't know. And I had to do a little research after I saw it. I'm like, wait, so who is this guy supposed to be representing? And I was trying to figure out the Don Corneoli dude. I'm like, all right, so I guess he's supposed to be a federal agent, and he went rogue. And I was trying to figure out if it was like something that you guys just made up, or was it true? And then I started digging down into like the Bitcoin addresses that they were sending money to, and I'm like, oh wow, these guys really thought they could really get away with like infiltrating the Silk Road and then siphoning off some Bitcoin for themselves.
yeah,
So just seeing how like the corruption that happens within these organizations that are supposed to be doing right by people, that's supposed to be protecting people, it unfortunately, when you have all that power, you kind of get corrupted in the process, don't you think?
yeah. I definitely agree. Yeah, and so the character there that we're referring to is Carl. His name is Carl Force. I believe he's in
Hmm.
prison now. He was a
Mm.
corrupt agent, and was taken down in the process of Ross being put on trial and all that. But I mean, the irony of it is that like that guy's going to serve, I think, much less time. Ross is in
It's
for
like
a
triple
double,
life, like something
I
like
think
that.
it's a double life sentence. Yeah, but it's just really crazy and messed up. But yeah, so Carl Force, real person. Of course, the show takes a ton of liberties, and it's not like exact history, but we do want to hit on some of these big points. And so, obviously, he has like an alter ego in the show as Don Cornhole, and that's supposed to be like Don Corleone, from
Mm.
The Godfather.
Yeah.
Chris is a huge cinephile and into a lot of the good classic films. Obviously, I am too. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I've seen like the little Men in Black references and
yeah, we
everything.
like exactly. We like to sprinkle those in different films we like. But yeah, man, I mean, it's you hit it on the head. Power corrupts, and we have a situation in this country where I think the original vision was to have power decentralized into communities, and that's been turned on its head now. And so now you have these giant federal agencies with huge amounts of overreach and power and money and all that. Yeah, it corrupts people, bottom line. And also, a lot of these wars, quote unquote, like the drug war. We talked a little about this, I think, in the last one, and I think
I
you
won't
edited
cut it
it.
out. I won't edit it out. No censorship this time. No censorship this
Don't
time.
censor me, bro. No kidding. But what I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too far. I'm just going to say this: that like, when the United States, the supposedly free country, the land of the free, has, I think, the second highest incarceration rate of any country. I believe we're just below North Korea. It's a crazy number of people that are in prison, and many of them. I think it might even be, if I remember right, something like 50% are in for nonviolent drug offenses.
For just
So
for like some marijuana, of
just for
course.
smoking some weed or even
Yeah.
selling a little bit or something like that. And so my experience has been that people are going to use substances for good and for bad purposes. Like for example, like I had a surgery. Um, I had a hernia, and I had a surgery, and they used fentanyl and some other stuff, some real heavy hitter drugs. But I'm glad they had those when they were operating on me, right?
You don't
And
want to
so
feel that.
yeah, you don't want to feel that. So like those drugs are good when they are used in the right context, right? And I feel the same way about marijuana and psychedelics like psilocybin, mushrooms, and
Okay.
LSD. These substances have a time and a place. I believe that they can be used in a beneficial way. And so rather than allowing these people, these you know government types to tell us what we can and can't put into our bodies and how we should or shouldn't live, I think we all owe it to ourselves to do our own thinking and to do our own deep dive into this topic and to just look at it objectively. Like alcohol, if you look at toxicity, you have heroin, which is again, like if you go to a hospital, they'll give you Oxycontin or something like that. It's the same thing, right? It's an opioid. So opioid toxicity is 5-to-1, meaning that five times a regular dose or an effective dose will kill you. So an effective dose would be whatever they give you to numb the pain for your surgery. Let's say
Yeah.
they give you 5 times that amount, you will die. With alcohol, the toxicity is the lethal to effective is 10-to-1. So 10 times an effective dose of alcohol will kill you. It's still a very, very dangerous substance.
Right.
It's totally legal, and I think it should be legal. That's fine. But when you compare that to something like marijuana, which has a lethality, like you would have to be in the 1,000-to-1, many
Yeah.
1,000-to-1 before. Like I've never seen a credible example of a death by marijuana from someone just overdosing on it. So
I heard of about one last year, but it was like for like a young person, and I like I said, I didn't get any credible information after. I think it was just a rumor, but you're right about that.
Yeah, so there's not a lot of sense in a lot of these drug policies, and that's the first sort of like smoking gun that this is nonsense. And then secondly, you look at things like when you had alcohol prohibition in the United States, you had gangsterism, grew
Rise.
dramatically during that period of time. And when they reinstated,
All these gangsters
adult
got
consumption,
rich.
yeah, well, a lot of people got rich, but my point is like that same dynamic applies to the drug war. So, the reason you have violence is mostly because people cannot settle their disputes in a court of law in a civilized manner. And, they can't go to that court because they're doing something illegal. So they end up shooting each other. So these sorts of things have ripple effects. I mean, this reminds me of the COVID stuff as well, where it's like, even if the like the motivation, let's say, is supposedly good, like, we don't want people to die of drug overdoses. Great. I mean, that's a fine motivation. But in trying to make that happen, what are the externalities? What are the consequences of trying to impose that? And, so the older I get, the more confident I am in the fact that I believe for society to work, we have to get out of other people's lives in this sort of draconian government top-down sort of way, where we're trying to impose what we believe is right on other people. Instead, we need to lead by example and talk about these things, and and help people who are struggling with drug addiction. And there's a whole study too that goes into, I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but it was basically, I think it was called Rat Park actually. But it was basically this study where this guy had rats, and he had some rats in sort of the typical clinical setup where they're in a cage by themselves, and he would give them, like a water bottle that was laced with heroin, I believe it was, or cocaine, one or the other. But the point is that the rats in these cages would kill themselves because they were, well, bored, and they would start drinking this laced water and end up killing
Right.
themselves. So they had another setup, which was like, they called it Rat Park, which was many rats living in a cage together, and they had little things to play with and comfortable, I mean, it was like, sort of heaven for rats, right? Is basically how you can think of it. But they also had the heroin drip bottles in these cages, and the rats in Rat Park did not kill themselves from the substance. So the only thing that changed was the environment that these animals were in. And so that really, to me, is
You hit a solid point right there, and I definitely want to come back to that.
Yeah.
Continue.
Well, yeah, just to wrap it up, I mean, I think this study proves a lot in that, I see drug addiction and abuse more as an issue of people struggling in life, and maybe being depressed, being at a point where they feel like they don't have much going for them for whatever reason, and they don't have the support of family and friends. And so they end up turning into this substance that ultimately, is a negative. But I mean, people also abuse, food. They abuse television.
Yeah.
Like,
Everything is poisonous to some extent.
Yeah, exactly. So
the one thing
yeah,
I wanted to point it out was during economic downturns, drug use and alcohol use skyrocket. So my local liquor store booming every day, and I'm like, is this an essential? Like, because they said that only essential businesses should be. I'm like, is alcohol an essential thing? And they're just like, we're hiring, we need more people. Booming marijuana on the streets. Not that I know, but booming right now. And I'm like, people have nothing better to do but sit at home and drink or smoke, and just when you said they don't have like that social interaction, people are gonna drink and smoke themselves to death.
Yeah.
And so I was like, yeah, you when you said that whole rat experiment, that's exactly what's happening right now.
Yeah, you're right. It's yeah, they are putting us. They're trying to push us into these little cages. I don't know. It's so crazy that it almost feels like it's intentionally nefarious, and I hope to God it isn't. But yeah, we need to all start waking up, because this is not a good direction to go as a society.
Right. So I have another question, because I don't want to hold you too long, but I had to get these in. Do you think Bitcoin and Friends is too ahead of its time?
It could be, perhaps a little bit. We have a good path forward, though. I'm pretty excited. Since we talked last, we struggled on. We released episode 4. I think there's a lot good about the episode. I think it's maybe not our best, to be honest. I think we rushed it a little bit, and I think we were all a little burned out.
It's
Um,
self-criticism. Don't worry about that. We still like
but
it.
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people still liked it. We got some hate on it, but point is, we were struggling to try to find a model that worked, and also realizing that during that time that we were continuing to see our views drop on YouTube. Um, the official word from them was that our content was vulgar, I think was the term they used, something like, or shocking. But basically, the official word from YouTube is that we were swearing too much, and it was sort of too like R-rated. So the last episode 5 that we just released, we toned it down in terms of there's no swearing, as far as I remember, or maybe there's one swear word, but no f-bombs. So we just toned it down a lot. And our plan is to move forward with sort of like that PG rating. And we're hopeful, because the good news is we just found out that we're able to pay to advertise episode 5, which they wouldn't let us do. I think it was
Okay,
episode
that's
3.
good. Yes, more
Yeah.
viewers. We
So
need
right, so
this.
we can start paying to get some more viewers again, and the click through rate pricing was pretty reasonable, like a couple pennies a view is what we're probably going to be looking at when we get it up. We got to optimize and work a little bit on our ad
SEO,
campaign.
all that stuff.
Yeah, but we got some guys helping, and we'll be able to sort that out. So that's exciting. And so the point is, we're going to keep going. We're going to finish the season. We've got 3 more episodes.
Oh yes, I wanted to ask
Yeah,
that. Yes, 3
yeah.
more episodes.
We've also I think we've hit like a good rhythm as a team, in terms of who's doing what, and getting this thing kind of into a well-oiled machine, you could say. So I'm real excited. I think we're going to be able to finish the first season hopefully by like the end of the summer is what I'm really hoping for. August, maybe September latest.
You got the
Um,
scoop here first.
yeah, so it's happening. So that's that's good news. And the other thing is, what we're planning to do then is, once we finish the season, we're going to go back and we're going to revise some of the earlier episodes, because there's, both in terms of animation quality and some other things, there's some things we'd like to improve. So we're going to go back, do some revisions, and just like polish the entire thing as well as we can. And then we'll see. But what I'm also pushing Chris on, and we'll see if he goes for this, but I'm hoping that we can do the PG version and then do like an uncut director's cut kind of version.
That'd be perfect. Just
Which would,
to get more eyes on it.
yeah, and hopefully we add a couple minutes of extra content, some some, not swearing for the sake of swearing, but there's some really funny
We're
moments.
adults,
Yeah, we're
to be
adults,
honest.
right? Yeah, exactly. And to me, the scene with the episode 1 scene with the guys peeing on Bitcoin, it's just amazing for so many reasons. And so, like, I don't want us to have to cut things like that I think are really funny, and add to the story. I mean, ultimately, it's a good metaphor for how people viewed Bitcoin when it first came out. I mean, people, when I was talking about it when I first got in like 2014, people just looked at me like I was totally crazy most of the time when I would
That's exactly how I feel now. Trust me.
Yeah, and even still, you're right. Even still, people look at you like you're crazy, because it's still not it's not a sure thing. Although I think it is, but
Yeah, I mean, come
it's
on
inevitable.
now.
As long as we've got smart people like you working to make this happen, we're gonna make it happen. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, we in here.
yeah, we've got a growing base of really motivated, awesome people that are working on this project. So I'm super pumped, both about Bitcoin and about the show. But yeah, so we're going to release, like I said, next couple months, finish out the season. Then we're going to revise it and kind of polish it up. We'll probably launch it on a new YouTube channel, just so that we can get rid of any sort of taint that happened because of the old channel. And then hopefully we release like we would probably charge for it, but hopefully people who are like big fans would be cool with like, hey, I'll pay $5-10 to buy like the uncut season.
Yeah, the Patreon version.
Yeah, exactly. Do a Patreon or something. We'll figure out exactly how we would do that if we do it. But yeah, that's the plan. And then the other thing too, that is like, as long as we can get the view counts going up again, we should be able to bring sponsors back in. Because I mean, sponsors obviously are not going to pay us money if they're not going to get eyeballs. And so we couldn't find a sponsor for episode 5. So we had to, just kind of
the Gemini
find other ways to make it happen. But so we're hoping we can get the view count moving in the right direction, back up again. We can start getting sponsors and hopefully survive. So
No, you guys are surviving. Like I said the last time, it's quality over quantity. I know you're a little stressed about making sure to get as many episodes in, and I was just like, nah, take your time. You know, art just takes its time, and you got to get it where you get it. But we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up for you guys. I want to know where. I want to know what I already know, but where can my audience, support the project? Where can they find you? Where can they get insider scoops on when the next episode of Bitcoin and Friends is going to come out?
Good question. So btcandfriends.com is our website, and that's a good place to go just to get started with everything. We have links for donation, for merchandise, for our Patreon, which is small, but I'm hoping to start adding more and more content on there and try to make that into something that is worthwhile for people to sign up for. And of course, our YouTube. We're also pushing more on library TV,
I saw that.
LBRY.TV.
Decentralized.
So yeah, I mean, for people who are frustrated with censorship on YouTube, which is becoming more and more ridiculous by the day, it seems, library is a good choice and a good second, like a backup at the very least. But I hope people check it out. I'm a fan of the project, so we're on library.tv. So check it out.
All right, perfect. All right, guys. I hope you guys appreciate Broccoli Rob's insight. I'm gonna keep calling you Broccoli Rob because it sounds so much better. I love it.
Cool, man. Go for it.
I hope you guys love Broccoli Rob's insight on the market, Rona, drugs, and of course the future of BTC and Friends. Like I said, go ahead, check out the website, support it, because things like, projects like these in the crypto space, they need to be supported, because it just proves that it doesn't have to be this super invest trading, like being in the crypto space, you don't have to be this super professional and what are the charts look like and all this. You don't have to be that. You can come in, create something, and it can still thrive. And this is like a statement to that. And this project needs to survive. So make sure you guys support the channel. Go watch every episode. And of course, I'll leave all the links down to everything in the description below. Other than that, guys, thank you for checking me out again. Take it easy. Peace.
Thanks, Mackenzie.